Look, have you been carrying around this, I don't know, this incredibly heavy, just unmotivated feeling lately? If you have, I really want to start by acknowledging exactly where you are right now. It is so confusing when you just feel completely drained for no obvious reason, right? Especially when, on paper, nothing in your life seems to be going wrong. But what if the exhaustion you're feeling isn't actually what you think it is? Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into a really fascinating psychological concept that completely reframes everyday burnout. We're going to walk through 7 distinct signs that reveal you aren't actually tired of your life, you're just tired of people. And this is the exact question that haunts so many of us when that deep exhaustion sets in. You know the feeling. You wake up, the alarm goes off, and you just stare at the ceiling. Everything feels like a monumental chore. You feel totally disconnected, and this terrifying thought pops into your head. Am I tired of life? I want to speak directly to that internal confusion for a second. It is absolutely valid to feel this way. The exhaustion is very, very real. But before you spiral into thinking your whole life is on the wrong track or that you need some massive, impulsive career change, we really need to look at a major paradigm shift. Because if you pay close attention, there's actually a very specific moment when that heavy feeling completely vanishes. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the contrast between these two states. On one hand, you have that generalized heavy feeling and total lack of motivation we always associate with being tired of life. It literally feels like trying to walk underwater. But notice what happens when you are finally alone. Does it suddenly feel a little quieter, a little lighter? Kind of like you just took off a heavy backpack you didn't even realize you were wearing? If you feel that instant sense of relief the second the door closes behind you, it's a massive indicator that your life itself isn't the problem. The drain is actually coming from social friction and the people around you. Okay, so let's figure this out together. We're going to walk through 7 very specific, really common signs that point to people, not your life, not your career, not your long-term goals, as the true source of your exhaustion. By the time we finish this explainer, you're going to have a completely new lens through which to view your daily energy levels. And more importantly, you'll know how to actually protect them. So let's dive into the very first sign. Sign number 1 is all about how you experience your alone time. When you are genuinely tired of people, solitude suddenly becomes your absolute sanctuary. Now, I want to be super clear about the distinction here. You aren't isolating yourself because you're sad or depressed or avoiding the world. You're doing it because it feels incredibly peaceful. It's the difference between being stranded on a lonely desert island and taking a much-needed luxurious vacation to a private, quiet cabin. You're retreating to heal. And honestly, it makes perfect sense why that alone time is so incredibly vital for you right now. Think about what happens when you're by yourself. There is zero pressure. There are absolutely no expectations placed on you to perform, to entertain, or to play mediator. Nobody's asking for your opinion, and you don't have to explain yourself or your actions to anyone. Your mind finally gets a break from processing other people's emotions. You aren't lonely at all. You are simply retreating to a safe space free from constant external demands. For the first time all day, being alone doesn't feel lonely. It just feels safe. Which brings us right to the second sign, the sheer exhaustion of interaction. When you're suffering from this kind of social fatigue, the everyday friction of communication becomes glaringly obvious. Suddenly, things that used to be totally easy and automatic, like simple conversations, catching up with an acquaintance, or navigating polite small talk, start to feel like monumental tasks. The effort required just to nod, smile, and pretend to be engaged, it feels exactly like you're running a marathon. Oh, we have all done this dance. Have you looked at your phone recently, seen a text message pop up from a perfectly nice friend, and thought to yourself, I'll reply later? And then you just stare at it like it's a ticking time bomb, until later turns into hours, and those hours turn into days. Listen, you aren't doing this because you hate talking or because you're a terrible friend. It's just that the simple act of replying feels like a massive chore. You're simply tired of conversations that don't feel real or meaningful anymore. The effort required to fake the enthusiasm just isn't in your tank right now. And this brings us straight to sign number 3. Psychologists actually refer to this as emotional drain. It's that rapid drop in energy and that intense feeling of being overwhelmed when you're exposed to external negativity. When you are fundamentally tired of people, your tolerance for this kind of negativity absolutely plummets. Your emotional sponge is already completely full to the brim. That means things you used to be able to just brush off or tolerate with a polite smile now feel entirely, overwhelmingly unbearable. When you're socially exhausted, specific triggers act like an immediate drain on your battery. It's literally like a phone at 1% entering a freezing cold room. It just shuts down. Complaints, drama, unnecessary conflict. You notice the chronic complaining around you so much more than you used to. And instead of stepping in to try and fix it, or play the mediator, or even engage with a ridiculous workplace drama, your only instinct is to just walk away. You simply do not have the battery life to fund anyone else's unnecessary conflict. Because you don't have that battery life, we see sign number 4 emerge. You stop explaining yourself. Think about it. You used to explain everything, right? Your feelings, your personal decisions, your side of the story. Now, you just let people think whatever they want to think. And it's not because you don't care anymore. It is simply because you are tired of being misunderstood. Ultimately, silence becomes your conscious choice. Silence serves as your armor, it protects your peace, and it is far less exhausting than trying to force someone to understand your perspective. This defensive mechanism naturally leads us to sign number 5, avoiding certain people on purpose, and doing so completely guilt-free. It happens in this very predictable sequence. First, you anticipate exactly how interacting with a specific person is going to make you feel. You just know they'll leave you drained. Because of that dread, step 2 kicks in, and you actively choose distance over engagement. It's like avoiding a massive pothole in the road because you already know it's going to ruin your car's alignment. And step 3, most importantly, choosing that distance feels entirely undeniably right. I really want to assure you here, avoiding these people isn't born out of hate. It is a vital, totally necessary emotional boundary. Now, as you start enforcing these boundaries and stepping back, you'll hit sign number 6. You begin craving absolute depth and meaning. You might look around and realize your social circle is starting to get much, much smaller. But I really want to reframe this for you. This shrinking circle is not a loss, and it doesn't mean you're becoming antisocial. It is an incredibly empowering shift in your quality standards. It's basically like decluttering your emotional closet. You don't want just anyone's presence taking up space in there anymore. You want real depth. Let's move to and see how this builds, because you'll notice how your needs are changing as you protect your energy. Surface level interactions, talking about the weather or recounting basic weekend plans, they're completely losing your interest because they just leave you feeling empty. Instead, you're gravitating entirely toward real connections that provide true emotional safety and genuine understanding. You realize that you don't want more people in your life, you desperately want better, more aligned people in your life. What's really amazing about this stage is that your mind is actively working to filter what you actually need. It's kind of like a plant naturally turning toward the sunlight. You are actively seeking genuine understanding. You are actively seeking out emotional safety. You want real conversations and actual depth. If a social interaction doesn't offer these things, your exhausted brain simply rejects it. This isn't you being difficult or picky. This is a brilliant self-defense mechanism protecting you from wasting what little social energy you have left. And that brings us to the 7th and final sign, which explains a truly confusing everyday phenomenon. Have you ever gotten a completely full 8 or 9 hours of sleep, physically rested perfectly, hit the snooze button, and still woken up feeling just as exhausted as when your head hit the pillow? That is because the exhaustion you're experiencing is emotional fatigue, not physical fatigue. You aren't just physically tired, your actual soul is fundamentally drained.
So the crucial point is this distinction right here. Physical rest, like sleeping, laying on the couch, resting your body, will never, ever fix emotional exhaustion. Your body doesn't need the rest, your mind and your emotions do. Emotional rest means getting actual physical space from people who take way more than they give. If you're constantly navigating one-sided relationships, no amount of deep sleep in the world is going to magically recharge your emotional batteries.
Okay, now that we've diagnosed the 7 signs, let's talk about reclaiming your peace. If you've been nodding along as we've gone through these, recognizing yourself in them, I just want to slow down for a second and reassure you of something very important. Being tired of people does not make you a bad person. It doesn't mean you hate everyone, and it certainly doesn't mean you are broken. It is simply a very loud, very clear signal from your brain that something in your environment needs to change. To summarize the reality of your situation, your root cause isn't a failure, and it's not a weakness. You have simply been giving too much for far too long. Your energy has been stretched thin in one-sided places that do not pour back into you. You're essentially running an emotional overdraft. The remedy? You need to start listening to your energy. Don't force yourself back into those same draining patterns just out of a sense of obligation. You need space to breathe, and you need real, nourishing connection to refill your cup. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly powerful question. Are you really tired of life, or are you just tired of the wrong people? I want to challenge you to look closely at your relationships today. Give yourself absolute permission to protect your energy, set those boundaries, and seek out the peace you deserve in a world that can often feel completely overwhelming. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Take a deep breath, protect your peace, and I highly encourage you to keep exploring how to understand and defend your own emotional energy.